Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Back at it again with another one, another AP, another episode, another video. What I'll be speaking about today is intense. It's intense. It's one of those things that make you think, what's the point of a government? What that makes you even wonder because I don't know. I don't know how to explain this to you. I don't know how to explain this to you. Look, the point of this way it started, and I want it to be known, is that when you look at the Mexican cartels and the Mexican government, those are enemies. Like they don't work together. They always fight. But when you look at the Chinese government and the Chinese mafia, hey, those guys are business. Those guys are working together. Let me get into it. I got me some notes. Let me start. The illicit networks between China and Mexico have evolved into sophisticated transnational operations that primarily involve money laundering from Mexican drug cartels and a growing weapons trade that facilitates these criminal activities. While the weapons trade between China and Mexico is less documented than the narcotics and money laundering aspects, available evidence suggests increasing connections between Chinese criminal networks and Mexican cartels that extend beyond narcotics to include weapons trafficking and other illicit commodities. Yes, sir. Let's keep at it. These relationships have created a symbiotic ecosystem where Mexican cartels generate enormous profits from drug sales, particularly fentanyl, in the United States, while Chinese networks provide both money laundering services and potentially weaponry, often in exchange for access to valuable wildlife products and other commodities. This analysis examines the complex relationship between Chinese and Mexican criminal organizations, the mechanisms through which they operate, and the multifaceted impacts on North American security, economics, and public health. The situation represents a significant challenge for regional security and requires coordinated international responses to effectively address the transnational nature of these criminal networks. What am I talking about? The weapons trade and money laundering systems between China and Mexico and the impacts on North America. Keep it secret. I'll start with the money laundering system. There's 2 points to this: the underground banking networks and the trade based money laundering. So we'll go into them separately. The primary financial nexus between Chinese and Mexican criminal organizations revolves around sophisticated money laundering operations. Chinese underground banking systems have become essential partners for Mexican cartels seeking to repatriate their drug profits from the United States to Mexico. These systems operate through shadow exchanges that exploit the high demand among Chinese nationals for US dollars to circumvent Chinese strict capital controls, which limit overseas transfers to $50,000 per year per person. The mechanisms work as follows. Chinese nationals seeking to move money to the United States contact underground exchanges who have US dollars available from criminal proceeds. The sellers provide details for a Chinese bank account where the investors deposit what is this called? Renminbi. I don't even know what's the correct pronunciation of that word, and I apologize. Once confirmed, an equivalent amount of US dollars is released to the buyer in the United States. This system allows Mexican cartels to convert massive sums of drug dollars into accessible funds in Mexico. or other locations while providing Chinese citizens with a pathway to move wealth abroad illegally. And you must know, doing illegal stuff in China, it's tricky. You really have to be smart about it. That's a brief explanation of the underground banking networks and where the supply and demand happens and why things are the way they are. Going on to the next one, the trade-based money laundering. Chinese and Mexican criminal networks have developed increasingly sophisticated methods to conceal the source and movement of illicit funds through trade-based money laundering schemes. These methods include fictitious trade invoicing. What this is over invoicing or under invoicing of legitimate goods to justify international fund movements. Another version of this is cryptocurrency transactions, using digital currencies to transfer value across borders with reduced detection risk. This is a very big one, and no government can stop this version. Unfortunately, by design, cryptocurrency is something that the government cannot alter or change. It's driven by people, not a central power of influence. I don't know how else to make any government understand that. But the third way is structuring techniques, breaking large transactions into smaller amounts below reporting thresholds to avoid triggering financial monitoring systems. That's the trade based money laundering. Apologies, let me go over the last bit. Another version of this money trade laundering system is wildlife trade. Using high value wildlife products like Tatoba fish bladders, which can sell for $40,000 to $100,000 each as a medium of value transfer between cartels and Chinese networks. The scale of operations is substantial. One indictment alone alleged $50 million in drug proceeds were laundered through these methods between 2019 to 2023, with law enforcement seizing approximately $5 million in narcotics proceeds during the investigation. I've got a few, I don't know, I have a table here which I drew up to sort of separate the mechanisms and the users of these methods. And I don't know, looking at it now, it seems a little longer than I actually planned for because this has to be a certain time, a certain length. So I'll go through only a bit, but I won't go through everything. So when you look at the underground banking method, the mechanism is matching Chinese RMB depositors with USD from drug proceeds. The scale is at $50 million and above in a single network. And the primary users of this method are the Sinaloa cartel and Chinese money brokers. Another one is the cryptocurrency method, which is digital currency transfers. The scale is growing, and it's usually used by tech-savvy criminal elements because criminals are apparently thought to not be smart, which is bullshit. You know, criminals are really intelligent. Those are some intelligent people. To pull off the things they pull off, I mean, you know, it just so happens they get caught. You know, one mistake, but all the other successful ones, you know, so criminals are something else. I'll call it that for now and let it slide. I'll move on to the next one, the weapons trade dynamics. So we have the nature and scope of weapons transfers. While less extensively documented than narcotics or money laundering, the weapons trade between Chinese sources and Mexican cartels appears to be growing. Available information suggests that Chinese criminal networks may be supplying Mexican cartels with weapons and precursor chemicals for drug production, through the exact scale and mechanisms remain somewhat opaque due to the covert nature of these transactions. I kind of butchered a little bit of it there. I can't see properly, but you know, it's ironic I'm wearing glasses. But yeah, yeah. Let's carry on. Chinese networks primarily provide precursor chemicals for synthetic drugs like fentanyl and methamphetamine, which represents a form of weaponized trade that fuels the cartel's primary revenue source. The Department of Justice has highlighted how these chemical precursors flow from China to Mexico, where they are processed into finished drugs and trafficked northward into North America. While direct weapons shipments from China to Mexico receive less public documentation, the interdependence between precursor chemical transfers and the cartel operational capacity creates a de facto weapons trade that enables the cartels to maintain their violent dominance. Isn't that genius? You ban bread. Instead, we're gonna ship you flour, sugar, eggs. You can make the bread yourself if they're gonna ban bread. Genius. Genius. To the next one, the integration with other illicit economies. The weapons and precursors trade is increasingly intertwined with other illicit economies, particularly wildlife trafficking. Research indicates that Mexican criminal groups have expanded into both legal and illegal fisheries, violently monopolizing these industries to supply Chinese demand for luxury wildlife products. These wildlife products then serve as barter commodities that can be exchanged for weapons, precursors, or other valuable goods from Chinese sources, creating a complex ecosystem of illicit exchange that bypasses traditional financial systems and detection methods. This integration of illicit markets represents an evolution in transnational criminal operations, with Mexican cartels increasingly functioning as diversified criminal groups. The involvement of Chinese networks as both suppliers and customers in multiple illicit markets creates persistent channels for weapons and dual use technologies to flow to the cartels in exchange for drugs, wildlife products, and other commodities. Let's go into the impacts on North America. So this has different topics, subtopics, and I'll have to go through them each. I'm not sure if I'll go through all of them, but we'll see as we move on. The first would be the security consequences. The criminal partnership between Chinese and Mexican networks has produced significant security challenges for North America. The first would be the cartel empowerment. Because of this, there's access to sophisticated money laundering services and potential weapons sources strengthens Mexican cartels, enabling them to acquire more advanced weaponry and expand their operational capabilities. The second security consequence would be violence escalation. The increased resources available to cartels contributes to rising violence in Mexico, which recorded over 30,000 homicides annually in recent years. Those are South African numbers because we are around 24,000, many linked to cartel activities. The third security consequence would be trans-border security threats. Cartel violence increasingly spills across the US border, impacting border security operations and creating risks for American communities near the border. And the fourth security consequence would be corrosion of institutions. The massive financial flows from drug trafficking and money laundering corrupt public institutions in Mexico and potentially in the United States, undermining the rule of law and democratic governments, aka corruption, bribery. A second major impact on North America would be the public health crisis. The fentanyl epidemic represents the most direct public health impact of the China-Mexico criminal nexus on North America. Chinese suppliers provide precursor chemicals to Mexican cartels who manufacture finished fentanyl and traffic it into the United States. This pipeline has caused an overdose of deaths. Okay, like people are dying. fentanyl and other synthetic opioids caused approximately 70,000 overdose deaths annually in the United States. That's wild. That's actually really wild. Jesus, what are they doing there? Where are they getting the money to do this? Buying drugs costs money. Where are they getting this money? Another part of it would be the toxic drug supply, which this means that the proliferation of fentanyl has contaminated much of the illicit drug supply in North America, creating unprecedented risks for drug users. The next point would be public health costs. What this means is that the epidemic strains healthcare systems, emergency services, and treatment facilities across the continent with particular severity in the United States. Another point would be the new substance threats, where the criminal networks continuously develop new synthetic drugs and adulterants like nitazines and xylazine that present evolving public health dangers. Those are a lot of words that I did not. Sorry if I butchered it again. Apologies. On to the next one, the economic effects of this impact on North America. The money laundering systems and illicit trade between China and Mexico generate significant economic impacts across North America. Financial system integrity, right? The massive money laundering operations threaten the integrity of banking systems in all three North American countries. In June 2025, FinCEN, right? CEN designated three Mexican financial institutions, CI Banco, Intercam, and Vector, as primary money laundering concerns due to their involvement in processing illicit funds linked to opioid trafficking. I don't know why these people are not on the grey list, but South Africa is on the grey list. That means laundering money from gold is more of a crime than laundering money from drugs. Because I don't get it. I don't get it. Trade relationship strains. The illicit trade networks complicate the legitimate economic relationship between the US and Mexico, which exchanges over $800 billion in goods and services annually. I don't know what they mean by undermines because I mean people are getting employed technically. I mean making drugs costs like it needs manpower. It needs employees. That massive system needs employees. There's also the regulatory costs. Financial institutions face increased compliance costs to prevent money laundering through their systems, with US institutions now prohibited from processing transactions involving the designated Mexican banks. That's deep. They got sanctioned though. They got sanctioned, but not grey listed. Sad. Predatory trade practices. Chinese import surges threaten Mexican manufacturing sectors, with Chinese vehicles capturing 20% of the Mexican market despite Mexico being the world's fifth largest automaker. The Chinese have penetrated. They are in. They now have a piece of the pie. Apologies again. I'll be looking down as I'm reading because I really can't see, and I don't want to butcher these words. Like there's so many. There's so much information. But on to the next one, the policy responses and challenges that impact North America. So we have the current enforcement approaches. North American governments have implemented various strategies to combat the China-Mexico criminal nexus. One of these would be financial measures. The US has employed specialized tools like the Special Measure 6 authority under the FEND Off Fentanyl Act to prohibit fund transmittals to designated Mexican financial institutions implicated in money laundering, assuming it's the banks that they sanctioned. Another one of these would be law enforcement operations. Coordinated investigations like Operation Fortune Runner target specific money laundering networks, resulting in indictments against multiple participants in the laundering schemes. Another point would be international coordination. The US seeks cooperation from Chinese authorities, though this has been limited and sporadic. Following US tips, Chinese authorities have occasionally taken action, such as arresting individuals suspected of drug related money laundering. And again, the war between China and Mexico, I mean, the war between China and America, the economic war, this is one of those consequences of it because China is homogenous. Chinese people are Chinese. Americans are not necessarily Americans. Could be a lot of foreigners there. And when you look at how China works with their Chinese mafia and how America does not work with their Mexican cartels, it's obvious that who's going to come out on. I was beginning to say a lot. I was beginning to say a lot. Anyway, on to the next point, the trade policy adjustments. Tariffs and trade remedies target specific sectors where Chinese competition threatens North American industries or enables circumvention of existing trade measures. The next one would be the persistent challenges. Despite these efforts, significant obstacles remain in effectively addressing the China Mexico criminal nexus. They've been trying to do it for years, they never want to be able to do it. They work with these people, they are well connected. I don't see how this is of any tangible. I don't know. So anyway, onto these limitations, jurisdictional limitations. Chinese authorities often reject responsibility for precursor chemical smuggling and wildlife trafficking, arguing that these are problems for the Mexican government to solve, which is true. But now this is a transnational crime. So I think the Chinese government knows what they're doing. They just don't want to get involved in a system that might end up causing them more damage than good, especially with people who are sanctioning you, who are at war with you economically. I don't see the point in collaborating with them, cooperating with them. It's it's wasted effort. The next limits would be the capacity gaps. Mexican environmental and law enforcement agencies lack resources, personnel, and mandates to effectively combat these transnational networks, with further budget cuts decimating already meager capabilities. Sound familiar? SAPS? Another one would be adaptive networks. Criminal organizations continuously evolve their methods, shifting to new synthetic substances, alternative money laundering techniques, and different smuggling routes in response to enforcement pressures. I mean, it's the same as when the government creates new, better laws, updated tax laws, while the concept and idea of tax is criminal on its own. But I will not. Let me not. I don't want to get shadow banned. In fact, I might get shadow banned for this video, but I don't want to get entirely banned. Like nah. So the next point would be demand persistence. The underlying demand for illicit drugs in North American markets and for wildlife products in China continues to drive the profitable criminal exchanges that sustain these networks. And I don't know how else to explain this other than Woolworths, Checkers, ShopRite, Pick and Pay. I mean, with this whole unemployment and people saying we need people to own businesses, where you buying your food? Where you going to do your shopping? I don't know. I don't know. A network once established is very hard to disrupt. So, to the conclusion and future outlook. The weapons trade and money laundering systems between China and Mexico represent a sophisticated and adaptive transnational criminal ecosystem that poses significant challenges for North American security, public health, and economic stability. While the weapons component remains less visible than the narcotics and money laundering aspects, the integrated nature of these illicit markets creates mutually reinforced relationships that strengthen criminal organizations on both sides of the Pacific. The future evolution of this threat will likely depend on several factors: the effectiveness of North American coordination mechanisms, the level of cooperation from Chinese authorities, the ability to reduce demand for illicit commodities, and the capacity to address the root economic and social factors that drive participation in these criminal economies. Addressing these challenges requires a comprehensive approach that combines targeted financial measures, intelligence-driven law enforcement operations, and diplomatic engagement with China and public health strategies to reduce demand for illicit substances. The deep economic interconnections between the United States and Mexico, with $840 billion in annual trade and extensive supply chain integration, provide a strong foundation for cooperation, but also create vulnerabilities that criminal networks exploit: bribery. As President Trump's administration threatens additional tariffs on Mexico and pressures both Mexican and Canadian authorities to intensify anti cartel efforts, the balance between cooperation and coercion will determine whether North American countries can effectively combat these transnational criminal networks while preserving their vital economic relationships. The solution may lie not in severing economic ties, but in achieving deeper integration and coordination that enables more effective action against the shared threat posed by these Chinese Mexico criminal networks. All in all, it's pointless what these governments want, because the way things are right now, governments do not represent what the citizens technically want, what they voted for. And what citizens want is drugs. The citizens of America want their drugs. And if America is not going to provide these drugs for them, is not going to manufacture these drugs for them, is not going to build an industry around this to help these people and give them what they want and need, they are going to abandon the American government and its laws and enforcers, and they want to simply go with the illicit route. That's not just in America, that's in every country, even here in South Africa. When the government doesn't want to play ball with you, the citizen, you then go and do your own thing behind the government's back. And you do it in such a way that the government technically cannot touch you unless they'll be doing underhanded things against you. Long story short, government wants to control the people. The people want what they want, and they don't want the government to tell them what they want. They want to tell the government what they want, not the other way around. That's gonna be it from me. Make of that what you will. Drugs are everywhere. Corruption is everywhere. So make of that what you will. But it is an interesting case that I just brought to you. Very, very factual, and it gets you thinking. It really gets you thinking. At that time, this guy, Trump, is just pushing tariffs on everybody. Yeah. I hope his country gets drugged even more. Let me end it there. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking. For those who haven't, please like, please share, please subscribe. And I've been working on all in all, sorry for that, but I've been looking at ways to monetize my channel, ways to get funds to boost my channel, maybe boost production quality, better camera, better background, maybe go rent out a studio. But I've been looking at it, and I think I found something with Monetag. So I'll be posting a link in my description and in my bio, my homepage. Please click the link to support the channel. It's free. It's not gonna cost you anything. It's just like subscribing and liking my videos. Support the channel. Let's watch it grow, and let me keep informing you on what's cooking. You can decide what you do with the plate afterwards, with what I've given you. But let me tell you what's cooking. On to the next one, guys. Appreciate it. Cheers.